Can a single pilot transform an entire team without touching the steering wheel? What if I told you that in Ferrari they are more impacted by what Hamilton does outside the track than for his laps in it? Today we are going to discover why his silent work in Baku has put the entire F1 on alert. Ferrari appears to the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in a situation of apparent stability, but of deep structural fragility. Although he occupies the second place in the Constructors' Championship after 3 disputed dates, that place is more symbolic than solid. Maranello has entered into a strategic transition process. It is no longer about winning every weekend, but about building the bases of the 2026 car, internally known as Project 678. This choice has high-range technical, political, and sports implications. Immediately, the most controversial decision was the cancellation of the aerodynamic package destined exclusively to Baku. The new soil spec Baku, which had been successfully tested in wind tunnel and validated by CFD simulations, was discarded by direct order of Frédéric Vasseur. This modification, which would have increased the efficiency of the car in the long lines of the urban layout of Azerbaijan, represented an estimated cost of €1.8 million and about 225 hours of research and development. I do without this improvement allowed to release resources, but also left the SF-25 exposed against rivals such as McLaren and Mercedes, who did continue with their active developments. It is not a simple technical resignation. It is a symbol of the conceptual turn that Ferrari crosses. The technical direction headed by Loic Serra has opted for a philosophy of structural conservation, in which it is prioritized to sustain stable performance during the year without compromising the design of the future car. That means maintaining elements such as the Serra 2 rear suspension, still in the comprehension phase, or the reused aerodynamic load wings of Miami 2024. There are no radical innovations in sight, only minor adjustments that enter into the residual cost margin allowed by the FIA budgetary stop. This reactive approach has generated uncertainty at all levels of the equipment. In the paddock, it is commented that Ferrari's internal culture is again in tension. On the one hand, traditional engineers who ask for continuity and immediate results. On the other, the new generation of technicians who prefer to focus on the regulatory revolution of 2026. In the midst of this priorities conflict, there is a figure that, without raising the voice, is reconfiguring the way Ferrari thinks and acts: Lewis Hamilton. Before the race begins in Baku, the team has already lost more than a development package. He has yielded impulse, credibility, and a concrete opportunity to compete from you against a McLaren who has not stopped evolving from the first day of preseason. While everyone looks to the future, Ferrari's present becomes increasingly diffuse. Lewis Hamilton not only came to Ferrari with the implicit promise of a new chapter in his career. What he found when landing in Maranello was a technical structure trapped in contradictions, a corporate culture divided between the nostalgia of the past and the fear of the future, and a car that, although competitive, was far from being a natural extension of his driving style. What has surprised its own and strangers has not been their adaptation to SF-25, but the way it has chosen to adapt. Unlike what happened in his last stage with Mercedes, where he often demanded that the car be molded to his liking, in Ferrari Hamilton he has assumed a more introspective and collaborative role. In fact, the Briton has made the conscious decision to study Charles Leclerc data thoroughly. He has replicated his braking style, has copied trajectories, and has modified his management of the car balance to find a symbiosis point with the SF-25, which was originally designed around the characteristics of Monegasco. This adjustment process has not only been a technician but psychological. Hamilton understood from Australia that his presence should represent more than results. It should become a transformative influence. After a first race where his performance was discreet and barely added a point, he locked himself in the Maranello simulation rooms for hours. He requested additional feedback sessions with chassis and aerodynamic engineers, and proposed alternative configuration scenarios based on their years of experience, especially in urban paths such as Baku. One of the key points in which he intervened directly was in the operational validation of the rear suspension, Serra 2. Although this piece is still in the learning phase by the team, Hamilton insisted that its potential to expand the aerodynamic window was underestimated. Their telemetry data revealed how this system could mitigate the sensitivity of the car in prolonged braking and allow a more stable traction in low-speed curves, something essential for a circuit like that of Azerbaijan. In addition, it was he who recommended keeping certain hybrid components of the 2024 package, such as low-drag rear wings used in Miami, noting that the SF-25 did not need more aerodynamic load, but predictive stability in the rear axle. This vision, more pragmatic than ambitious, is beginning to permeate in the decision-making criteria within Ferrari. The most significant thing about all this is that Hamilton is not looking for a perfect car, but a reliable, predictably and progressively optimized. And he is doing it from a role that transcends the pilot. He is an architect of team dynamics. It has restructured the way in which technical priorities are communicated. It has even influenced how post-carrier meetings are managed, asking that cross-sessions between simulation, strategy, and aerodynamics departments are included. This horizontal coordination, absent in recent years, is generating better internal synergy. Outside the track, his leadership has also begun to reconfigure the spirit of the team. From mechanics to logistics staff, many in Maranello talk about a Hamilton effect. An atmosphere of serene demand where the error is not punished, but is dissected and absorbed as learning. And that, in an environment historically pressed by the Italian press and the legend of the Scuderia, represents a breath of fresh air. The first great crack opens between two worlds that now coexist in tension, the old guard and the new paradigm. On the one hand, engineers and veteran members who have been in Ferrari since the post-Schumacher era. People molded by a philosophy where mechanical talent, pilot intuition, and tradition were the fundamental pillars of success. On the other, a new generation of technicians, many from more Anglo-Saxon structures such as Mercedes or BMW, that value methodical planning, interdepartmental transparency, and extensive use of data mining and predictive simulation for each development decision. Hamilton has become, perhaps without looking for it, in the catalyst of this internal conflict. Your work method requires precision that defies the operational informality that still survives in some areas of the team. For example, he has insisted that post-carrier meetings do not focus only on the results, but that each department presents a technical report in structured format, something common in Mercedes, but unpublished in Ferrari. It has even suggested to modify the order in which configuration decisions are scaled, to avoid bottlenecks between track engineers and the simulation department. This new operation model has generated resistance. Some see it as a threat to Ferrari's identity, others interpret it as an opportunity. But what is indisputable is that the environment has changed. Decisions must now be justified with technical evidence. The pilot's feeling concept is gradually replaced by comparative metrics. And this, in Ferrari, is almost revolutionary. In parallel, there is a silent but equal impact on the emotional dynamics of the team. Hamilton is not just a technical reference. It is also a dominant psychological figure. His presence alone changes the atmosphere of a work session. From the press staff to telemetry technicians, everyone knows that they are being observed by someone who has seen the best and worst of sport, and who is not there to waste time. This pressure is not explicit, but it feels. And that level of demand begins to permeate up and down in the team's hierarchy. For Frédéric Vasseur, this scenario represents an opportunity and risk to equal parts. On the one hand, Hamilton provides you with a technical authority that reinforces your transformation project. On the other, if Ferrari's structure fails to adapt to the new operating model, it runs the risk of implication under the weight of its own contradictions. That is why he has become so active in recent months. The cancellation of development for Baku, the reorientation of the team by 2026, and the explicit support for Hamilton's proposals are not casual decisions. They are signs that the direction of the Scuderia is betting on a long-term reconfiguration. What Ferrari is trying at this time is not simply to win races. It is something much more complex, more risky, and more ambitious. To change the DNA of a structure that, for decades, has oscillated between genius and collapse. And he is doing it in real time with one of the most iconic and demanding figures that this sport has seen, Lewis Hamilton. And yet, the most paradoxical is that perhaps that is precisely its greatest advantage. Lewis no longer needs titles to validate his legacy. But it does need a purpose. And that purpose saved Ferrari from herself. To leave a mark that transcends the podiums could be the most powerful narrative of her career. The streets of Baku are not just one more urban stage. They represent the turning point where this silent, methodical, and strategic work begins to become visible. Where the SF-25, for the first time in the year, could show maturation signs. Where the internal effort begins to project out. But it is not immediate results, but of signals. Career consistency, improvements in data correlation, effective technical feedback, greater tactical coherence between classification and Sunday. It is in those details where the battle is played. Not in the flashes of victory, but in the small decisions that build a championship team. Hamilton knows it. And that is why he has focused his focus on consolidating the base before forcing the top. Can you then save Ferrari before 2026? Possibly not in the traditional sense of returning a crown this same season. But you can do something even more valuable: to leave Ferrari prepared to truly fight the new regulatory cycle. It can be the bridge between chaos and stability.